Broadcast Team Alpha, live just about everywhere out there. And, excuse me. And we are on, you can see us on broadcastteamalpha.com. We are on 3 TV stations and YouTube and just about everywhere else out there you might want to find us. And we are here for some cutting edge conversations and quantum possibilities. My name is Agi, and my co-host Nori will not be with us today. She is preparing for a class that we are doing tomorrow, and she want to make sure the visuals are perfect. And they're going to be, because she is almost as much of a perfectionist as I am. So anyway, and we have a phenomenal guest with us. He is from England, and I'm going to introduce him shortly. But before we do that, I want you to know how you can connect with us. You will find us on broadcastteamalpha.com and also on YouTube and these places I mentioned. And we talk about a lot of the stuff that you're not supposed to know about. So go there and visit. And you're going to find some interesting things. In fact, when you get to Broadcast Team Alpha, go into the picture gallery. There is over 5,000 pictures of things that should not exist, but it does. That's going to be an interesting for you. It's going to take you about a couple of weeks to go through that, so have some fun with it. And also, when you are on YouTube, if you find it in your soul, just participate in the super chat function if you feel like it, because if you like what you hear, we would love to hear from you that way also, because it's just like Christmas Eve when we get a super chat support. And I'm going to introduce the guest to you here. We have Philip Kinsella. And I am really excited about talking to him. We are going to have some education here tonight. He lives in England, and he is a world traveler. He travels and speaks. He's been to the United States, and he is also a very, very thorough UFO and extraterrestrial investigator. He's found... excuse me, that's what I get for drinking coffee. He found some very interesting conclusions to some of the things that we all want to know about. He has become a spiritual teacher also, and he has written several books, quite a few actually. Excuse me. And one of them is Reaching for the Divine. Another one is How to Communicate Effectively with your spiritual with your spirit guides, okay, and loved ones on the other side, and also the public deceived, passages through eternity, the enigma of the dead, UFO and aliens, and guardians of the dead. And I think there's possibly more books, and I may have butchered some of those names, and I think he might be nodding on this one. So we're going to get him to straighten me out on that one. And also, he has become a clairvoyant medium and a researcher into the UFO and the extraterrestrial issue and everything that goes along with that. And he's a very serious UFO researcher. And we're going to start out talking about this UFO issue, because we got to talk about, I call them in England, and we got to talk about some of the things that hardly anybody talks about when it comes to the UFO issue. Because there are people that has been abducted and in some cases invited onto a ship, and they find people looking like us with military uniforms, Earth military uniforms, alongside with the tall white maybe, or a tall gray. So there is some stuff going on here, cooperation between us, not necessarily us, but the military side of us and the alien presence. And boy, oh boy, do I want to talk about this one for at least 5 minutes or so. Maybe get your insight or what you have found or heard on this. Welcome to the show, Philip.
Thank you, Aggie. Thank you very much indeed. I'm very honored. And yes, it's very interesting. I mean, people can claim anything, but, I've always remained with facts and as we see them. And although most of the subject matter resides within theoretical debate, I do agree with you. The phenomena is multi-complex, especially with regards to the abduction hypothesis. And I have to boast a little bit here, credited with a revolutionary theory with regards to the Greys back in 1996 in a publication called Alien Encounters, a magazine back then, which is no longer available. But certainly the abduction phenomena comes with a level of high strangeness. And the question is, and always has been, what are we dealing with? Are we dealing with extraterrestrials, ultra-terrestrials, interdimensionals? The other thing is the human part, the human concept of this is because when people have been abducted, they have reported seeing military personnel on board these craft. So the big question is the military working hand in claw with these beings, or is it the other way around? We're not really sure, but there is argument with many people that presuppose that perhaps, these Greys, the most famous within UFO literature, everyone knows what the Greys are, have been bioengineered by the military factions as some kind of robotic organic mechanism. We have to look at all areas with regards to speculation here. And this may answer also the bigger question as to why the military have kept this quiet. And also, and I can state for the record here, a big telltale sign is that I belong to NUFORS, which is the National UFO Reporting Service here in England that was created by Nigel Ross. And we decided that we would write to Parliament here in England. We have the MPs, and one of the MPs that we wrote to, very high-ranking MP that was also involved with another UFO event many years ago. And we sent a letter and an outline of what we wanted to do as researchers, bringing everything to the table, no lies, no cover-ups. Let's just put everything on the table and work with you guys in Parliament to, come towards some kind of disclosure. And all we got back was silence. And I think, to be honest with you, that tells us everything. So
Yeah.
we can't go into too much detail with regards to much of the subject matter because it's so complex. But yes, I agree. We still don't know what we're dealing with, although we can assume through theoretical content, as especially with the Greys themselves. And this area of the Greys, I did write a lot of this in You the Public Deceive, the Grand UFO Deception, which Philip Mantle, British ufologist, has brought out through his publishing company, Flying Disc Press. And with regards to the several theoretical ideas behind what the Greys are, what they may be looking for, where they come from, and why we have the problems we're having. But it is interesting to speculate that the military obviously know a lot more than we do. And this is why they're at pains to keep the subject matter silent. And that's their coldest weapon of all, is silence.
Yeah, and they are so good at it. But when we talk about Greys or people like us together with military people on a craft, a flying disc or whatever it might be, there are so many whistleblowers that is coming forward saying, hey, I worked with them at Area 51. They are 7 floors down at Dulce in New Mexico.
Oh, yes.
And there are so many, you have them in England, underground bases, where they talk about us species, as a species, working with aliens. There are just many, many different countries where they say, we're working with them. They're here right now.
Yes.
We should listen to that and maybe believe some of it.
Yes, and what's interesting also is the fact that when you deal with these whistleblowers, and these people aren't just like, your average Joe blogs in the street. Most of these are high commanding officers. And the way that they relay their information is almost so fantastic, yet to them it's quite ordinary. I know that there was, some speculation with regards to underground bases where reptilians have been seen, just walking through the corridors to underground bases and, being accompanied by military officers. And to them, it's just a normal thing. But for us, it's quite fantastic. So I do believe to an extent there is this division, this divide within our society where those in the know, rather like, the Masonic order where people go in and it's all secret, the same with ufology. When you're brought into that faction, then of course it would be absolutely sacrilege to release any information or data. But because it's so fantastic, certain people come forward that want other people to know the truth. Edward Snowden was one of them. I mean, although taking things in a slightly different direction, he wanted to explain also about the fact of how he worked for an organization that wanted to spy on people. So, whatever area that you have, these whistleblowers are coming forward, and the only way that they can save their skin is by releasing the information to the public, because if they go missing, then people will start questioning. So it is quite fantastic and amazing, especially with regards to the abduction phenomena, the hypothesis behind that, and what's going on. This is what we're all looking for and what we're all seeking, which is the truth. And I think, the abduction phenomena and the greys, and even if we mention the reptilians, dare we mention them, always come with a level of high strangeness. But I think a lot of researchers are now coming to the conclusion that we're certainly branching into different areas now that was very different from the 1970s and 80s, where we thought everything was like material and physical in its construct. So we've come a long way.
I would say when we talk about the reptilian, one, a humanoid body with a crocodile head on it. Who in the world would believe that? But then again, we got statues of them that dates back thousands of years coming out of India and the Philippines and not so much South America, but that part of the world. You have all kinds of statues of people that have a reptilian head on it. Should we not start taking it at least a little bit serious? Because chances are whoever made those statues, they saw something.
Yes, and they've also been seen with the greys as well, which also are in stone carvings and the like. Now, one of the things is that we know for a fact that a lot of key scientists must follow the official narrative of how things were. And going into our antediluvian cultures, we discover that it is more shocking that perhaps we as a species were genetically modified. And I have always believed that. I'm not saying that we were modified by the current greys that are around us at the moment, but I certainly agree with you that a lot of our history has been hidden, and there is an agenda by the higher echelons to make sure that each and every one of us follow the official narrative. If any scientist or researcher or whoever they are steps out of line, they lose their funding and their respect. So,
and they fire them.
Yes, and then they're ridiculed. And the same with, we're in safe hands here as researchers because, we're not out to prove anything or to make a name for ourselves. We're just here looking for the truth, but at least most of us are. So, we don't belong to any, fraternity that tells you what to do and what to say. We are free-thinking individuals. And I think that's one of the most wonderful things to be, which is free-thinking and no longer programmed by a system which is intent in controlling and subjugating human consciousness. And I did think at one point whether or not that that this phenomena is increasing because of this wild subjugation of human consciousness, which is rebelling on some level, and these beings are coming on a stronger level of integration to show us or demonstrate to us the good ones and the bad ones as well, because like humans we have the good and bad, that we need to move away from this stagnant thought that we are just biological machines with a sell-by date, we live and we die, and that's it. I have never subscribed to that theory.
No.
So I think that, you know, when these occurrences of abductions occur, that is where a lot of my research and time and resources have been spent into looking into what the grays could possibly represent.
I totally agree. Now, before the show, we were talking, and you mentioned something that really just perked my ears up. You said that some of the abductees, or the people invited onto a ship, they actually were confronted or shown or met with dead relatives.
Yes, and this shows the power, and
Please.
this shows the power and the might of the shall we call them greys, because they're known as that, and they're the most famous within ufology. They are able to bring us into their level of awareness, you know, and I believe that they are able to walk through walls and doors as easily as ghosts. But I think what could be happening is that they are bringing the true essence of you into their field frequency of vibration, so that interaction is possible. Now, let's give an example here. The near-death experience. I've studied that and analyzed that, and how the person that's going through the near-death experience moves into a world more real than the one they left behind. Communication is normally done through telepathy, and also there is a sense of timelessness. But on many occasions, if their body, the physical body left behind, the vehicle, is diseased, when the soul or the consciousness of that individual returns, obviously they must in order to relay their story, they're normally healed, because I think that the energy of the soul is being corrected and brought back into its biosphere, and all is well. Now, what's interesting with an abduction is that it appears to operate in many ways, not always, but in many ways, like the near-death experience, where the person is taken through walls and doors and then brought into the presence of the greys, who mind scan, mind read. But the experience there is very different. And in many cases, the abductee does not really understand what's going on, and the memories are secreted, which is another interesting line of inquiry. And I know people have said, well, there's some kind of galactic ruling to say that they're not to get involved with us. Well, they've broken that. Well, the greys have. So I always joke and laugh, and you have to have a sense of humor. And I did joke with Kathleen Marden, and when she said there's probably a rogue group of greys out there, you know, like a rogue group of humans. But it's interesting, if you look at the abduction phenomena, what are the greys interested in? They're interested in what makes us unique and individual. And also, they are interested in hybridization. Now, why would a species that cannot reproduce, so we assume, be interested in reproduction? And this is where a lot of my research has been taking me into different alternative areas of speculation. Now, that like humans, you have different factions of humans with their own agendas. The same could apply to the greys. You know, we have those that could be bioengineered by our people. There could be those that are from other dimensions that's working hand in claw with our people. I believe that. And there is another faction which is operating on their level of furthering their research of individuality. And my research led me another book I wrote, Passage to Eternity, The Enigma of the Dead, UFOs and Aliens, hypothesized about the understanding that perhaps if we clone ourselves, literally clone our species, and no longer come through the correct passage of the birthing cycle, this then calls into question many other areas of speculation. So maybe the greys have counseled themselves out of creation, and they are intent in recreating a new genus, which gives them the right to that individuality, which gives them the right passage back to where we go to when we finish here. We don't know. But certainly, you know, these areas of research are opening up other areas, not just, you know, what I'm talking about, what I've been looking into, because as I said before, I'm open to all forms of speculation. So you can see that a lot of people are, you know, now moving into new territory, new areas of speculation that and incredibly were once denied. So we are evolving And as we evolve, unfortunately, the phenomena evolves. It's almost like it's one step ahead of where we are. So that's very interesting also. So I
Yeah.
believe there's a multitude of things happening that's going on here. And, you know, people say, well, you're wrong. Well, maybe we may be wrong, but we have to start by looking outside the box. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, yes, in terms of the dead being brought on board, you know, with the abductee, I think the Greys are wanting some kind of emotional response. I think they feed off of the individual to see, you know, about fear, emotions, those things that they appear to be devoid of. So it is, a lot of researchers are correct when they speculate that the Greys are intent in, you know, finding out exactly what makes us what we are. And as a species, they seem, again, so far removed from what we are as humans, and that fascinates them. So I believe that we're dealing with an entity or an intelligence that is so far removed from what we are.
Hmm.
And you know, in terms of spatial dimensions, you know, out there in what we call the universe, they may come from a space or time that's very, very different from ours. So there is that we can consider at least.
Yeah, and when it comes to dead relatives on the ship, there can be several explanations to that. One of them is probably more technical, and that is that every quantum mechanics is telling us that everything around us is created from the mind.
Yes.
If they have a way to tap into our mind, they find my dead father back there and they resurrect him, extract him from my mind and create him on the ship. And then in a way that we don't understand, we could have a conversation with my dead father in my mind. Uh,
Yes,
am I just
absolutely.
wild here? Or?
Yeah, no, and this is another thing that I've been working on, consciousness, because if I give a simple example of your mobile phone, it's a physical piece of hardware. It's useless without the signal that carries information, that operates on a different level of reality. Now, we, I believe, are operating along this same premise, where consciousness is literally infused through the neurological process of the human brain. We're on a limited processing unit, so we can only, you know, record so much. And I believe that we record from birth to death. Now, what's interesting is that the Greys seem to connect in to the person's consciousness, thereby becoming a reality, and they can dig into your memories. They can get to wherever they need to go to. And this is the other interesting thing about the displacement of time. It could be possible that when the abduction is taking place, that the Greys are removing you into their space and their domain. And if you think about it, because of that, the consciousness is no longer connected to the biosphere. So this is where the memory may be hard for the person to retrieve, because like astronauts who go into space, you know, they are changed. So I believe that the Greys are integrating themselves onto a personal level of the human psyche individually. And this is why we have a lot of experiences that are very different from one to the other. But there are patterns which suggests that the abduction is actually taking place. You can have three people that view a UFO, only one will see it. But the UFO also seems to, you know, change the whole environment. And while it's doing that, it then goes into another process in those cases of abductions where it will integrate on a personal level with the individual and then go out. And this is why people say, I want proof, I want proof. And it's like, well, they don't hardly leave any proof. Unless, of course, they affect the perhaps astral part, the real part, or the, you know, auric energy field, or consciousness, or soul, if people want to, you know, label it that. The real part of you, if it's brought into their vibration, interaction is possible. But because the astral part, the soul, is still connected to the physical sphere, whatever's done to the astral will affect the physical, rather like healers doing distant healing without actually touching, in most cases, the person, you know, through. And this also brings into the equation of consciousness our consciousness being
Yeah.
able to survive outside the physical realm through remote viewing, astral projection, this type of thing. So I believe that the Greys are very smart. They're very clever. They know what they're doing. But unfortunately, researchers are left scratching their head, wondering what on earth is going on. And this is how they want it. This is it. They must
Yeah.
have this because they don't want us to know their true intentions. And that is worrying. Very worrying.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I see now we have, hang on, we have 5 minutes left before we're going to take a break. And there's one issue that I would love to maybe have you touch on before that. And that is that you had your own experience
Yes.
when you were taken on to a ship, maybe from what I understand, kind of against your will, or
Yes, absolutely. In 1989, the winter of 1989, in the village of Marston Mortain, it's about 5 miles outside of Bedfordshire. That was our last place before we moved here. That was a very distressing experience, but I will tell you that it afforded me a new dimension of thought that came out in 1996. Although the abduction was in 1989, my mind was thinking, how did they do what they did? How could they remove me from my body and yet still leave physical marks on me afterwards, which were recorded? And this then set in motion my determination to find out what actually happened to me. And although I still don't have all the answers with regards to what they call the abduction, we have to be careful here because people label it abduction. We don't really know what it is. It's just our human terminology which states that. It was interesting, and this led me then onto a crusade to discover what we are dealing with. So that is an area that I will cover after the break, and very upsetting.
Yeah. Well, chances are, I know you also have become a psychic medium.
Yes.
Do you think that you were given some abilities or gained some abilities because of that incident on the craft?
Yes, I believe that something occurred, something shattered, something opened, and without going into too much detail, I went to go and see a medium later in my life, and she brought all this through about the abduction. I mean, it wasn't known then. I didn't bring it out then. Because I was more interested in my own research until I started getting connected with ufologists and with groups. But I believe that the knock-on effect of that experience had somehow opened, maybe through shock or trauma, I don't know, another area. Or was it providential? We don't know. But it's interesting, and this led me then further into the research of not just the ufology, but also consciousness, the afterlife. The possibility of us going beyond this realm of what we call reality, which I don't think is. I think it's a part of a walkthrough that we're all going through. At least that's the way that I view it. But certainly the experiences that I've had have actually demonstrated that there is more to the mere biological flesh and blood system that we're in. That there is a much larger picture here, that the system we serve has tried very hard to mock and condense into nothing more than a laughing stock. And I know that from media outlets, and that kind of like opens up another dimension of how the media work, how they operate, and how they're trying to contain us literally through thought. And of course we can see there's a lot of cracks starting to appear now with regards to that, because people, they want you to go on a program and they think that you're a tin hat wearing individual. When they find out that you are smart, surprisingly, and you seem to know what you're talking about, they don't want to know, because all they want is the entertainment factor. They don't realize that they're dealing with people who have their own ideas about what's going on. And so I believe that's what happened with me back in 1989, and it opened up other areas that were dormant. I think we all have them. It just sometimes it's a shock, that the shock of something that opens that faculty open.
Chances are that what happened to you back then may not have been very pleasant, but a good thing came from it. So
Oh yes.
Yeah, so we shouldn't
Yeah.
really disregard that. I see now that we're at the bottom of the hour, so we should go ahead and do that. We'll be gone for about a minute and 15 seconds or so, and we will be right back. So please let me know, Mac, when I am live again, because I can't see it.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Had a need.
Are
And
we
if
allowed
my
to
father
speak?
had a need, then how many other people have need?
The key to Tyler's coffee is the roasting process. Because Mother Nature makes the coffee bean, we can only work with the processing.
We knew we wanted to go USDA certified organic. We wanted to be the purest and cleanest coffee in the world. We had to source stuff from Africa, we had to source stuff from Brazil, we had to source stuff from Chile, and we put it through our proprietary Z-roasting processor. So what that really truly means to you is that the coffee doesn't have inflammatory properties in it. I'm dedicated to serving 50 million Americans that suffer from stomach-related modalities, and also the millions of other people that just deserve a great tasting cup of coffee that's healthy and safe.
Are we live? Okay, we are back here with Broadcast Team Alpha, and we are talking with Philip Kinsella, a UFO researcher and psychic medium, author, and many other things from England. And this is getting interesting. We were talking before the break, and of course, if you just came on right now, you lost the good part. So you got to go back and watch this one again. But I have some more questions, because we were talking about consciousness a little while ago. And someone that is being abducted or invited onto an alien or a flying disc, wherever they come from, are they real? Thinking back on the fact that quantum mechanics tells us that everything in our environment is created by the mind and not necessarily real. Are they real, or what is going with that? Because, you know, I'm going to take another 20 seconds and say something here. There is a theoretical physicist named James Gates. He says that our equations with quantum mechanics on the blackboard, if we go deep in the equations explaining the fabric of space, we find computer language, ones and zeros. And it is too organized and too symmetrical to be just by accident. It couldn't happen. There's an intelligence that put it there, and we didn't do it. So
Yes.
whoever created the movie The Matrix, they knew something.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
What about us and the alien presence? Are we the same, or are we coming from maybe different dimensions into here where there might be something real? Or what do you think? I mean, this is getting...
I think, to be honest with you, with our understanding of quantum mechanics, quantum theory, when we look into these subject matters, it's like going within as opposed to out there. Mm-hmm. And I believe that, you know, we do hear these stories that we are in some kind of simulation. And I do believe that could be possible, because we can only see a certain amount of the light spectrum. Our senses are so limited with the 5 senses. It's when we open up the 6th sense, we still are trying to understand the 6th sense in terms of what this means. Now, I know you mentioned clairvoyance. You know, I've always worked with facts, information, and I always ask for yes or no when I do what they call a reading. But there does appear to be another side. But I believe that when there is another side that's alternating on a higher level of vibration, rather like the signals to your mobile phone network systems. So I believe that the process of creation is very intricate. And this is something, again, I've got to state here, the system is adamant for us not to know about, because this will free us, all of us, in the understanding that, you know, we've been had, literally. And I think things are breaking apart. But in answer to your question, are the aliens real? Are we real? What do we know as reality? You know, they say that we're living a dream. And I believe that, you know, I believe that when we pass over, and I have seen the other side on 2 occasions, all I can tell you is it's almost like when reawakening from a place that you remembered where you were before. So, you know, the big debate is, you know, are some of the greys coming in for their own means? Are they here to help us? Are they us from the future? Are they, you know, whatever we've speculated in you know, the short time that we have? It's interesting because we're thinking now outside the box. We're trying to further our understanding of what we consider reality. And have we considered that perhaps the greys themselves, which appear to be so very different from we are trying to find that question themselves through us, as we are through them? So, you know, this is interesting debate in terms of that. But I have always believed that creation has been designed by a higher mind. I believe that there is order, not chaos. We create chaos. We are order. And it makes me laugh if we go a little bit step further, you know, in terms of dimensions, the universe, you know, the way it all started. People say it was a big bang. Well, it's probably more than that, because you need to match to start a fire. You know, and it's so annoying in terms of the educational system, which just says, oh, there was a big bang. But we understand that there was more than that.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, by looking at these now, going into dimensions, you know, unraveling these dimensions which are wrapped up, these greys, for want of the argument for this discussion, may have unraveled themselves and come into our time in our space. And they've discovered us, a species that can reproduce, and something that they are interested in. Which is fascinating. So, you know, I've always joked and said, although I'm being serious here, but joking for this, I'd love to sit down with a grey without them having to, you know, wipe your mind clean of the memory of their experience, of your experience with them, and sit there and say, okay, tell us what your problem is, what issues do you have, and what are you looking for? But they won't. And there's some kind of, you know, agreement that they are not to reveal who and what and they are and where they come from. That's interesting, I think, you know, because that's the scary part, and how they wipe the mind clean and how they go about their business. They just come in and go out. We also hypothesized, didn't we, argue that, you know, perhaps that this intelligence, because it operates on a higher frequency of awareness, it needs to mold itself into our reality. And thereby, as it does that, it seems to integrate parts of this reality into its own construct to bring it here temporarily before it moves out. That is another area of contemplation, because probably where they come from, they are on such a high level that they need to bring themselves down to our level, rather like a deep sea diver having to get into a deep sea diving unit to survive under the water. It needs a vehicle or an instrument to work through. So, you know, as I said, you know, with regards to my research, there are many areas that we have to look at, and unfortunately, you get attacked by much of the public because they think that, oh, you just believe this. Well, no, I don't. I've been open to all forms of speculation. Who is to say that, you know, any of those is right? We could all be looking at it very differently. But as I said, it's important to look at all forms of speculation with regards to that. But I personally will state, for the record, that the greys appear so far removed from what we represent as a reproductive species, as a species that has identity, individuality. They don't appear to have that. And this is, I think, this leads us into other territories of trying to understand what would happen if we cloned, if we began to clone humans, taking away the reproductive processes. What will happen on a spiritual level with regards to the soul? You know, and this is another area of deep contemplation. We can only speculate as to that hypothesis.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about consciousness here, I really miss my co-host Nori, because this will be right up her alley, I tell you. And the consciousness that they are expressing is so far ahead of us. They are
Yes.
telepathic. They can move things by their mind. Telekinesis, I guess, is the simple term of it. But they can do other things that we probably at one time could have had, but
Yes.
maybe were taken away from us at one time in a genetic manipulation some 300 and I don't know, 100,000 years ago. But maybe the gray are on the backside of the evolutionary curve. And their consciousness may be declining also, so they need our physical DNA to supplement their own. And that's what some of the people are saying coming out of adults in New Mexico. They say that they, I think, is 7 levels down where they're growing the grays in vats of liquid.
Yes, that's right.
Like, and also I read in the document that came out of the Air Force, South African Air Force at Valhalla after the Kalahari Desert crash of the flying disc.
Oh, yes, yes.
In there, the aliens that was found in the crash were closer to a plant than to a human in physiology.
Yes, that's correct. And one of the interesting things, first of all, is that the greys seem to appear to work as a one hive mind consciousness. Now, that may give them the great intellectual power and also psychic abilities as they, you know, unite their minds as one consciousness that can override and do these amazing things. I think that as human beings, because we are individual and we are clouded by conscience, that this makes it difficult for us to execute, you know, the main areas of what we would call paranormal activity. So I think and feel that because they work on a one hive mind conscious level of integration, this makes them extremely dangerous and very powerful. We also understand that, you know, with regards to these creation of the greys, that they need some kind of vessel to come into. And this also, you know, calls into debate, and we have to address it here just gently, that there could be a war. You know, we go into, without getting involved with religious ideology, there has been a war of good and bad. And who is to say that perhaps, you know, those lower entities are trying to find their way through to our reality? You know, that's another area that, you know, people can take if they're interested in that. But as I said, it's important to look at all facets. Whatever the real reason, the truth, that it's there, it's happening. Now, with regards to the greys coming into this reality, perhaps they're being, you know, created on a physical level to bring them into this realm. Remember, we said about them consciousness having to lower itself and then morph itself within our reality, rather like the mediums of the day who, you know, ectoplasm is quite questionable, but there have been amazing cases where, you know, ectoplasm has been seen to come out of our form. And, you know, to generate, you know, the spirits from the other side. It could be that the greys are, you know, manifest themselves into our reality and finding new ways of bringing themselves into this field of vibrational energy frequency. So, you know, and it's very disturbing, though, because one of the areas this is that we have to look into, is that, you know, are we dealing with a benevolent force, or are we dealing with a malevolent force? This is questionable. Again, we get into deep waters where you get the love and light people, and you get the people who believe that it's completely different. So, it's very tricky grounds because we don't know enough yet to truly establish that answer, because we're just working with theoretical content. It's interesting speculation, absolutely, yes, totally.
Yeah, and when we talked about the spirit or the consciousness
Yes.
being matched with a gray,
Mm.
I think that is perfectly possible because spirits can take on any. I mean, I bet that a spirit could inhabit a robot just to get the experience. But on the other hand, too, there are people that has been taken into deep hypnotic states and asked about their previous lives, and they are coming forward with information. They were not human, but they were on a spaceship in a different form than a human.
Yes.
So I think that humans are unique in the human existence, but out there with trillions of planets that is probably like Earth, why should we think that this is only possible? There is others.
Yes, absolutely. And if you think about it, going back to the question of cloning and the inherent dangers of that, memory, because we as humans, I believe, are creating memories from birth to death. We can't stop to appreciate a moment because it's gone. Yet on the other side, I believe that the collation of our memories and experiences are pulled into what we call the Godhead to further the expansion of creation. And I do believe that, we have lived other lives, maybe in other dimensions of reality. Who is to say that, most of them aren't coming back to see that soul group that you belong to? That is another area that I've looked into, and it does make a lot of sense. But it's so decompartmentalized with regards to the UFO problem that it makes it nigh impossible to find out what is what. As I said, but I do believe that a lot of it is quite negative, and I believe that most of the greys are after what they want. I still believe that, that there's something to do with getting themselves into our realm, into our dimension of reality, and that's being done perhaps through secret military units who they believe that these greys can give them, untold dreams of technology. Going back to the mind, the greys are very, very powerful through their mental dexterity. I mean, they're incredible. And the mind is the source to all creation. So maybe that the greys have rid themselves of the torment of being individual and have conditioned themselves into a one hive mind consciousness to able to pull more through from the mind, which to us would appear like magic. And I believe that eventually we as a human species, if we survive without destroying ourselves, will be able to exercise this psychic component to a level where we can even begin to create from the mind. We do that already. We create from the mind already, because everything imagined comes into reality if we have the tools at our disposal, or the materials to make it. It's a slow process of creationalism. It's a very, very tedious method, but I believe that the greys are so far ahead now that they are able to create simply by using their mind. But because we're on differences of vibration frequency, us physical, them non-physical, although they are physical in their realm and see us as non-physical, they have to make a connection between the two, and bingo, they've got contact. But they've done it in a way, and it's the secrecy which is more of a problem for us to understand and get our heads around. Why are they secreting themselves? That tells us that it doesn't seem to be very good in certain terms.
I have a personal question for you. If a ship landed in your backyard, the door came open, and a guy standing in the doorway looking like you, and he did like this, would you go on to the ship?
I would have to say yes, I would, because I would walk where angels fear to tread. I would have to, because, what have you got to lose? I mean, I know that, most people try to categorize ufologists or whoever you are as like, tin hat wearing people. The truth is that, I think to a degree, most of us don't feel comfortable here. There is something more that we are looking for. And I would gladly go up the steps and find out who the guy was, where he came from, and, all the rest of it. I always joke and say that when I saw E.T. as a kid, I cried because I wanted to go with E.T. And as soul groups, I believe that most of us, that yearning inside tells us that we perhaps are not from this plane of reality, that we have existed somewhere else, and that coming into this form is painful and very difficult. I think it's one of the harshest planes that we can experience in terms of like soul development, and I believe that. And I believe also that, when we pass over, that's where the real life begins. As C.S. Lewis, the, creator of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Yes, that's
what
right.
What you just said is absolute key, and that is something people need to understand. Once you pass over, you will be more alive than you are here, because here is no life; it is existence.
Correct, and also a transverse of memories, because as I said before, the Greys seem to be interested in memories, in experiences of love, of taste, of smell, the things that they themselves are devoid of. And when you've seen the other side, which I have, there wasn't a signpost saying "Welcome to Heaven." I will just tell you that it was more real, and the memory of it was such a shock. It's almost as if the memory came as clear as day and I knew where I was from. So I believe that the limited processes of conscious awareness, through its recording when the body dies, the signal or the real you separates and unites with the other memories that it's had from previous incarnations. People say, well, where is consciousness? Well, think of this. Where is the signal to your mobile phone? It knows how to connect directly with your unique device. You see, and this is where people are now, oh, yes, I didn't think of that. No, but, look at that. And that might tell you, all that information cannot be destroyed. You can't bend or, burn the signal that's coming into your mobile phone. It's there, but even if the physical device is damaged, the signal is still pure. So, as I said, this is how I see it, although a little bit multi-dimensional within the way I see things. I'm trying to encompass a great part of the puzzle to try and put the dots together. I still haven't done it, and there's nothing wrong in having your own ideas and theories, and even though people will disagree with that, that's fine. But I say to them, well, have another look at it. See what you make of it. What do you make of this? What can you see within this?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, if you took this phone back to 1621 and showed somebody that you could take a picture of him and show it to him afterwards, they would burn you to the stake.
Yeah, yes, and how we have evolved. But we are still children with a box of matches, unfortunately. But I'm not stating that with every single individual on this planet, because a lot of souls are, very different, very peaceful, very loving people, very highly evolved, and this is where it gets quite cranky. I'm not dismissing the human race, but we can see what's going on, and whoever's in charge, I think they need to take a chill pill, because the way that we are going as a species is definitely telling us that you are destroying this planet and you're not giving us any other option to use. But I bet you any money you can see now what's happening. Things are changing, because all of a sudden electric cars will be coming in. No one would have saw this coming all those years ago, but I bet you any money all these anti-gravity things will start coming out soon that have been known for a very long time and hidden, because it would upset the the billionaires who are running the oil companies and all the rest of it. So it's damning. And I think as a species, we need to take stock of what's going on, not
Yeah.
just with the UFO phenomena or the psychic phenomena, but also how we as a species and where we're going. So, you know, I'm not going to get into that debate, but it is there anyway. So, you know, when you get involved with ufology, when you get involved with consciousness, you begin to be more aware of your fellow human compatriots, and you have an understanding that, you know, life is very precious. You know, and maybe that's why we're here. We don't know, but certainly the biggest problem at the moment is UFO field investigations. But it is
Yeah.
fascinating, and I'm like a kid, and I can't help myself. I just got to get in there, and try and find out just what's going on.
Yeah. And it kind of appears to me like humans as us, or at least the ones that maybe is in the secret space program, you know, we
Oh
got a
yes,
bad reputation out there. It's almost like if a UFO fly by Earth, they lock their doors, you know? It's kind of like, but, and then there are people that saying, well, we are afraid of that the aliens would come and take over the planet and do away with us. Well, actually, we're pretty good at that part of it ourselves. But I don't think so. I don't think the aliens are going to come here and take over and do
no,
away with us, because if they wanted to take over Earth, they would have done it 500 or 1,000 or 20,000 years ago when we were not able to shoot them out of the sky when they came.
yes, when we were less self-developed in terms of
Yeah,
arms. I think that you know, with regards to the Greys themselves, they are working secretly and silently, and they are working towards their own agenda. They could also be working with our military establishments, because they obviously, you know, we hear about these treaties and so forth, and that the military are only interested in what they can gain through this so-called technology, which would appear like magic. And it would not surprise me if there are certain military factions who have behind their closed metal doors in technology that would, you know, throw us completely, like, wow, that is awesome. So there, and I do feel that there could be a breakaway civilization as well. Let's bring that into the equation, where the elite want to have supremacy. You know, they want to subjugate the masses because things are getting out of control. The planet is kind of like overpopulated. Resources are becoming precious. And it wouldn't surprise me, I'm going to say this, it wouldn't surprise me if, and you know, however ridiculous this may seem, if they've already got both bases on the moon or in other areas, and that the public have fed one thing and that they have something entirely different. So, you know, you can see how the media cartel work, and any mention of this, they will slam down hard. How dare you, a conspiracy theorist? But you know what? The system that we serve needs a conspiracy. It
yeah,
needs the conspiracy because it conceals its own conspiracy, and it loves it when no one can see the wood for the trees, because it's all mixed up, and that's exactly how they want it. The moment someone steps out of line and they reveal something, you know, they must be brought right down to earth or ridiculed. And of course, you know, we are fighting towards what we call disclosure, for them to acknowledge that UFOs stroke UAPs, they've just changed the acronym to make it more scientific and less like the 1970s or 60s B movies of UFOs. And that's quite clever as well, isn't it? You know, changing it to a more unidentified aerial phenomena, where UFO is like a spacecraft. They're trying to make it seem more scientific and more, you know, less likely to be alien in my terms. That's the way I see it.
I think many of us that is alive right now, in the next few years, we are going to see things that we could never imagine. And it is coming very soon. I've had a little look at the future, and I'll tell you, it is all there in this timeline. We're going to see some amazing things, but we are getting down towards the end of the show here. Please tell people where they can connect with you, and also tell us some about your books.
Yeah, you can connect with me. I have an identical twin brother as well, at www.thekinsellatwins.com. And you can get my books on Amazon: You, the Public Deceived, The Grand UFO Deception. Also, A Passage to Eternity, The Enigma of the Dead, UFOs and Aliens, and also Guardians of the Dead. And my other books were published by other publishers are no longer available, but we have reprinted some on Amazon. But I'm also having Sky Crash Throughout Time republished, which I did an investigation into Rendlesham UFOs, Suffolk, England, here with another researcher, famous researcher. So that's coming out later this year or next year, I think. So I'm working on some new projects as well, some new books, and working on new theoretical dynamics. So, although, you can't get everything in an hour, it takes ages, but, we can skim across the surface of some which is important. And I will just say to all those out there, please believe in what you believe in. Let no one sway your opinion. Look for your truths. That is important. That is the important part of your journey,
If you could speak to the whole world and the world were listening, what's the last word you would tell them?
Truth. It's all about truth, not lies, not disinformation. Truth. That is what we're after, and that's what we're dealing with. That's what we want, truth. That's all that we've ever wanted.
Absolutely. And the truth we find within when we go into meditation or question everything, then we
Correct.
Sooner or later will find the core of the truth.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we'll get there eventually.
Yeah. Hey, thank you very much for being this. This was delightful.
Thank you very much, Aggie, for having me on board, and I'm very delighted, and I hope that some people, if they can take a little of something, that's fine.
Yeah, well, and the thing about it is our listeners are a little more educated than the average Joe Blow and Harry Ho handle out there,
Yes. Wouldn't surprise me. There are a lot of smart people out there. God love them.
Yeah. Yes, there is. So thank you very much for being with us, and then we will be back next week with another fantastic guest, and you're just going to have to wait and see. I can't tell you yet, but wait for this one. It's going to be good. Thank you very much, and we will see you next week. Good night, good morning, good afternoon, wherever